So yeah, I want to tell you a little bit about my art practice, but the best way to tell you is basically a lot of bad decisions I've made in my life. So yeah, let's get into it because I think it's like long, but maybe it's not. We'll see. So yeah, 7 bad decisions. It's probably way more than that. My mom birthed me, and then she gave me 7 names. So my full name is Daniel Eric Carlos Hector Alberto Sabio Mandri. And yeah, I go by Sabio. And like the silver lining there is I can like hide from the government, which is kind of cool, and just change my name whenever I want. Um, yeah. So then I decided what I wanted to do with my life at age 5. I was playing Super Mario on the original Nintendo, and I was like, how do they do this? This is what I want to do. Like, I just want to make video games. This is it. This is the thing. Um, yeah, and it's crazy. Yeah, so I learned I had to learn like this thing, computer science, because that's how you make video games, I guess. That's what they told me. So I started that when I was like 15. Started taking classes, learning Visual Basic, C++, all those, Java, all the classic stuff. Does anybody know Carol J. Robot? It's like some weird deep cut. But anyways, yeah, so then I was like trying to go to college for this, obviously, so I could make video games. And so I was like, all right, well, what college should I choose? And then I was like, all right, uh Georgia Tech seems cool. There's a lot of dope rappers from there. So so I ended up there. Um, then I actually ended up studying abroad here in Barcelona in 2008. And I was studying. It was around the time that iPhones started having apps, so that was like what we were learning about. And my TA was like, "Yo, do you want to just skip class and go to this hacker space?" And it was Hangar, and so I went to Hangar and I learned about pure data, and that I could like make this VJ controller with a gamepad, which I was VJing last night with a gamepad, and it was like a full circle. I was like, "Whoa!" But yeah, and it just literally changed my life forever. It exploded everything in my brain. I was like, "What? I can make art with code. This is what I'm doing with my life. Fuck video games." um, yeah. So next bad decision. I adopted a dog I found at a music festival. Shout out to Sad Dog. You know. So then yeah, whatever. Yeah, I skipped my college graduation, to go hitchhiking in Turkey, because that's what you do, right? I don't know. That's what I did. And then I actually ended up going to this like drum retreat thing, which basically I'm also a musician. Been studied violin from age 3. Then I switched to drums. Then I switched to percussion. Then every like new place that I went to, I tried to learn the local instruments. So I was in Turkey and I found this frame drum, and then it led me to inquire, okay, how do I play this thing? Because it's a very simplistic drum that you have to hold like under your arm, and you have to kind of do some different techniques. And there was this one lady in North Carolina, which is where my family was living at the time, and she was doing these trips to Brazil and all this stuff like that. So yeah, I skipped my graduation. I was hitchhiking in Turkey. Then I actually went to her workshop, and then yeah, she was like, Final Cut Pro. I was like, yeah, sure. And so cool. Got my first job, working on a film, living in the mountains of Asheville. That was fun. Yeah, and then that didn't happen immediately, because first I decided I would take a super low paying job in the most expensive country, which was Switzerland. um, and yeah, I was like working as an intern, making less than the people who were like bagging my groceries and stuff. It was fun, but I was programming for no money. It's awesome. But while I was there, I really didn't want to go back to the States, so I found a loophole and I got my EU passport. So that was cool. And then also in Switzerland, in a city of 200 people, the Glad Scientist was born, which the Glad Scientist is me now. but I lived above a pizza parlor that was mafia owned, and I was just up there with my Korgalek tribe, and I was just going deep on these like super experimental beats. And at the end, I would always just start laughing hysterically at what I'd done, and I was like, I'm like the mad scientist or some like Lee Scratch Perry, but I'm the glad scientist. And surprisingly, the name wasn't taken. But there is a magician who goes by the same name that uses science, and he's really cool. So like we don't fight each other about the name. We can coexist like that. So yeah, next bad decision. This one I wonder about. I bought I bought a VR headset instead of a Bitcoin miner. I was living in a unique situation in Atlanta where like my landlord didn't like care about how much energy I used. So I was like, maybe I get a Bitcoin miner. He's an ER doctor. He doesn't pay attention. He won't care. Like whatever, spike in power. And yeah, it was between an amp miner and a VR headset, and I got the Vive. But looking back, it brought me to where I am. So wait, not that part yet. So yeah, I got a VR headset. I ended up I got a VR headset because basically like I was doing all these projection mapping projects. I was doing all these like projects with a lot of logistics. Like, okay, where do you set up the projector? What do you have to build? Like all this stuff that's a huge headache. And also, like I was just me. Like I had no money. And then I was like, oh, VR, cool. All I got to do is just make stuff in 3D and just put a headset on somebody, and then it's an installation. Like, dope. Why didn't I think of this when they were doing the Kickstarter? And yeah, but then like a week later, actually, I was like, wait, can you make music in VR? And then I found Soundstage, which you'll find out more about later. But it's like a modular synth system inside of VR, and I started performing in that. Actually, like I don't know if there's a slide for it, but yeah, I was working at this startup space in Atlanta, and like I was managing the space, and it was like sort of similar vibe to this space in a way, but like way more narrow. It used to be like an office supply store, but I walked into this one room and I was like, there needs to be a rave in here. Like as soon as I went in there, it was I just had that calling. Um, and so yeah, I knew everybody was going to be gone on New Year's, so I threw a secret rave, and we like projection mapped the whole room, and then like I performed this like VR headset live set, and then like people were just like, what the fuck is happening? And then they wanted me to do it again, so I did it again, and I did it again, and then I'll get into this later, I think. Yeah, we'll come back to that one. So yeah, I quit my well-paying job to be I quit that job. Yeah, no, this is the right slide. Cool. Sorry, I was like way too on time. Normally I'm like wandering more. Yeah, so that started doing things, and then I was playing a lot of shows in New York. I was like, maybe I'll move to New York, and then the New York people were like, nah, move to Berlin. They'll like get you better there, and I was like, all right, fuck it. So I found this like spatial audio course in Berlin at Monome Studios, which is a really cool space there in Funkhaus, and I studied there for like a month, and I was like, I'm moving, like it's done. And so I was there doing the whole be an artist, figure out the artist economy, and art is hard. So yeah, we all know this stuff. I'm not gonna go too deep into this part. You know, it's like running your own nonprofit by yourself. You apply to grad school 4 times a month. You, you know, you're like network for freelance jobs for your entire life. Um, but yeah, but like all bad decisions, there's silver linings. Um, yeah, I don't understand that phrase, but that's fine. I guess some parts of being a first generation American are coming back to haunt me now in a parenthetical form. Yep, cool. So yeah. Okay, now on to the full VR section, because I got really into VR and did a variety of different performances. Some where I was like lying on the ground, and inside of the headset you see like the samples inside of this modular system, and they're showing poetry, and then like I'm moving around the space, and it's more about my body and the movements. And then this one, which was about like, okay, well, people's brains do interesting thing when they're on music, making music, like you get into a flow state. So I got an EEG, or some conference asked me to use an EEG, and they gave me one, which is awesome. I still have it. And then did it in VR. So I was like, that would be double flow state. And turned out like scientifically, I did a pretty good study on that. Documented none of it. Yeah, normal art stuff. But Yeah, that was a fun performance called Meld. Check out the little anime avatar in the corner with the brainwaves. Shout out to that. Um, and yeah, and then I mentioned in Berlin at Mono. This is a picture there of their 40 sound system, like 48.9 channel system. And I wanted to explore, like, I'd done a bunch of VR stuff, and I wanted to explore how VR would work without headsets. So we blindfolded four people, and then we used all of the other senses. So like smell, we were like talking. There was like a voice that was like moving in the room, telling the story, and then saying, "Okay," like walking through an orange grove, and like there would be people who were like kind of behind that were a part of the team that would like slowly slice like a piece of orange and like it'd be like really fragrant, and just engaging the other senses, and then that like really led to the next. So all the I guess in the end, like it's all like messing with technology, trying to break it in new ways, questioning a lot how why people think that there's like standards and like laws to using new technology when it's like very very new. And then the projects kind of lead into the other ones as I'm working on them. So while I was doing that, I was like, okay, well, shit, like, what is it like to be blind? Like, what is VR when you're blind? And why is our culture like so super visual? So I worked on this project called Infinite Observer. I had like a residency thing at Oculus or whatever it's called now, Meta XR. And I was there and I was trying to explore this idea of VR for the blind. They didn't get it at all. They didn't want to put any money towards it. They didn't get it. But I had the opportunity to live with a couple in the Netherlands who had created their blind couple. They're like super crazy people. Somehow downhill skiing, Paralympic while blind. I don't. There's a lot. They're really really cool people. But they turned an old church into a dark space, and so they take people in there and give them the experience of being blind. And so we were just exchanging knowledge for like a week. I was living with them, basically trying to experience life as a blind person, um, and showing them like binaural audio experiences, showing them VR experiences, showing them ambisonic experiences, and then they were showing me like the things that they had built, and also like taking me around to places that like they enjoyed, and also cooking for me. It is, I'm not gonna make fun of the cooking. It was okay. Um, yeah, and then yeah, I'm like really obsessed with quantum stuff. Yeah, and that's a whole nother separate presentation. And like wormhole, I can go into wormhole quantum. Okay, cool. I'll stop. But basically, I'm a poet in the end. Like all the rest of the stuff is just like whatever. I can kind of do that, but I generally start with poetry, and then I have visions from the poetry, and then I make music, and then that informs the visuals, and then it all kind of is tied to the poem at the beginning. So I started to think about how we exist in the past, present, and future at the same time in this concept of quantum time, and I wanted to talk to time itself as an entity. So I made a VR experience where you're embodying that entity called just in time. Yeah, I know. It's horrible. But yeah, and then on the wall, painted on all the walls are letters to this entity. Um so yeah, yeah, so that was like a project I was working on, and then I got a residency in Japan, and then I went there, and then while yeah, took a super low paying artist residency in the second most expensive country, and somehow got offered a job based off of my art, which like flipped the script on everything. I was like, what? So I have all these like really weird interests, never made me money ever, and then this group in Japan from Osaka was like, yeah, come see our projection mapping show. And I did. And I was like, y'all are doing dope stuff. And they're like, yeah, we want to see your studio. And I showed them my studio, and they're like, let's go to lunch. And they're like, all right, how much do you want to get paid? We want to hire you. I'm like, what? How did this work like this? But okay. Um, so yeah, I moved to Japan for a bit. And what I was working on there, actually, during that residency at the beginning in Tokyo, was continuing in this quantum world, it actually was an idea that came to me in Berlin. Like I came home from maybe Tresor at like 7 a.m. and I was sitting at this cafe and I was like, "Whoa, what if our pupils were actually black holes?" And I just started to continue to think about that thought for a while and like the metaphors that are related to it. That like they are kind of absorbing everything around us, and that's collapsing in on itself to form the consciousness that we are known and comfortable with. So I started to go into that, and I researched more about black holes and like quantum wave theory and gravitational wave research centers, and there happened to be one in Gifu in Japan. So I went there and I took a bunch of field recordings, and then I started to think about gravity in a different way, like how points where a lot of people come together are also high gravitational areas. So I went into like the middle of Shibuya Crossing, which is like where the most people cross and in the whole world, and did a bunch of field recordings there, like binaural. And then I convinced Bose somehow to send me their like AR sunglasses back in, this was like 2019, maybe 2018, somewhere around there. So old days of AR glasses, but I somehow convinced them to give me two of those. And then so these two people that you see, I'm sorry, my documentation's absolutely horrible, but it's okay. That's like life for me. But these two people are wearing the glasses, and they have immersive audio, and so when they're like turning their heads, they're like, that's really all you can do with these glasses. When they're turning their heads, it's like changing the overall impact on the experience, and the visuals are designed to be like when you close your eyes and you just see like the blue and the red, like tiny little dots all around. So it's supposed to be like that, and then kind of sucking into what becomes this black hole pupil. But anyways, yeah, and then also Intersect, which was a performance that I flew to Madrid to perform at Lev Festival from Japan for a weekend. That was a weird decision I made. Worst jet lag ever, but amazing festival. Love that festival, and yeah, that was just asking the question like, what would it feel like to be an AI nanobot and traverse through people's consciousness, like in a weird temporal way. I think I have a video of that. Oh my god. Yeah, let's see. I did a bunch of different variations of this. So this is one from during the pandemic. I'm just gonna choose some stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I also was like a VTuber when I was in Japan. So I created my own avatar and like would like make videos and stuff and stream. So I decided when they invited me to perform at like Ars Electronica that I would do an avatar set. So this was my set for Ars Electronica that year. That it was all like pandemic world and stuff. Um, but yeah, there's a bunch of different sections in it. We're entering into another section. It's a lot of different stuff happening. Also, when I was in Japan, like I started working for that company, as I mentioned, and I was able to. It was the pandemic, so we were doing like shows. They were like VJs originally for like VJing on VHS with Boredoms, which is like an old like psychedelic experimental band from Western Japan, and like then they became like a studio after that. So they're like super like grounded, really cool people. But yeah, since their roots are VJing, like pandemic hit, and it was like, okay, what are we gonna do? Well, we made a whole like AR system that worked with Unity, and it was all like real time, basically virtual production. So we're using like film grade, like super expensive cameras, and then like putting VR trackers basically on them, and in a very like makeshift way, but making like really cool shows for, I guess, like big Japanese artists. I'm big in Japan or something. So yeah, then I quit my dream job to be an artist again. uh, and yeah, so that took me home for an artist residency in North Carolina, and then another dream job. I'm gonna skip this one. Uh, this was the VR experience. Got to use a bunch of like Vicon, like crazy motion capture stuff and all that good stuff for that one and whatever. But yeah, on the day that that was showing, I got offered a job in Chicago working for these people who. Does anybody know who Amon Tobin is? Okay, cool. Man, it's getting harder to say that. Um, but yeah, so he had a really amazing projection mapping show called ISAM, and I remember watching it and being like, I want to work for that company. And then I was interviewing with this company, and then in the middle of it, they were like, yeah, and then we did this thing with them on Tobin. I was like, what? Okay, cool. And then they offered me a job, so I was like, nice, yeah, I'll do that. Um, and yeah, that allowed me to work on Bowser Jr. Shadow Showdown, which is the boss battle at Super Nintendo World, Universal Studios. So that's a 12-person tracking system using like super high speed cameras. They're doing like 240 frames per second, and basically we're blasting this like uh barricade with like infrared light, and then we're getting like like they're blocking the infrared projection, so then they're creating a silhouette, and then we're using that silhouette along with what was wrench AI, but then I had to work on finding a new AI tracking system that would be fast enough to do all this, which we ended up using NVIDIA Maxine. And that's actually, if you're a touch designer nerd, you would be happy with this. That's actually what ended up putting the NVIDIA body track chop into Touch Designer, was our work using that, which is cool. But basically, it was a NVIDIA Maxine was like for avatars and AR stuff, but it happened to be able to track multiple people really, really fast and was optimized for NVIDIA cards, obviously. And the computer was like just a stack of like A6000s or whatever. So yeah. So yeah, that was really cool and awesome that like 60,000 people play that every day. And I achieved my childhood dream because I was playing Mario and then I made a Mario game. Yeah, still trips me out. So yeah, and I was in Chicago and I was working and I was making art and I was working and I was making art and I was working and I was making art. Got a little bit into modular synths, but then I was also going into raves, and yeah, I was at this rave and I like met these dudes. They built this like crazy stage, and then I was like, that's. I mean, it wasn't even a stage; it was like a DJ booth. But anyways, I was like, dude, this is sick. And then they're like, yeah. And then I mentioned Touch Designer, and they're like, oh, cool, you know Touch Designer. And then like 2 weeks later, I'm working with them on a project for Art Basel. And then they created this whole hypermirror thing. They basically create like eggs that are like infinity mirror rooms, but in an egg shape. And it looks nice and people love it. So got to do that for like a museum. Actually, let's see. Now I can go crazy and go to other things. Oh yeah, earlier. No, I'll talk about that later. Earlier, but later. Hey, he's over there. Um, but where was it that I'm looking for? This one. Yeah, so actually, like next week, I'm working with these guys still. Occasionally, there'll be a new immersive space opening in Kansas City, and I worked on that. Uh, Mostly programming for the ESP32 and connecting that to a bunch of LED controllers that are running the LEDs inside of this pedestal. Also, the programming for like touching the pedestal and then it activating all of the screens and the sound and the LEDs that are around that are behind all that text. So kind of like the core backend for the whole system. Uh, and yeah, so that that's like what I do for work. Um, yeah, rave. Also worked on some video games in Unreal. Also expanded that into like touch designer, like interactive experiences that were like interactive like installations, but also music controllers because I got into like meta sounds in Unreal a little bit because it's kind of like Max MSP. But yeah, then I got laid off because I was like traveling a lot when I was working, which is like chill because they didn't care. And then I came for Sonar, that year. And then I landed and I went to my Airbnb or whatever it was, weird squat. And then I, opened my laptop to have my work meeting. And then like the HR person's on there with my manager. I'm like, oh fuck, I'm about to get fired. Um, so yeah, I got fired. And then I went to Sonar the next day and I was just like pretty honest with like my friend. He's like, how you doing? I'm like, all right. Just got laid off. He's like, oh, okay. And then he was telling me he was starting this like master's program here at La Salle. And I was like, oh, cool. Tell me more about it. Maybe I'll attend. And he's like, no, you have to teach. And I was like, all right, okay, cool. It's kind of always been my dream to be a teacher. And I thought I had to become a master to teach masters, but apparently not. So that was cool. So yeah, then I just moved to Barcelona, even though I didn't have to. It just felt like a good excuse. And then like I landed, and then like a week later, I had some friends that were installing something at the AI exhibition at CCB, and they're like, Sabio, you did that like crazy AI people tracking thing for Super Nintendo World. Can you please help? So I helped them with their project. I'm not gonna show it. It's not. I'm not like proud of it. I just helped them. And then I through that I ended up working with Solomon Lopez again on this project that I actually really liked. That was it was like an eye tracking thing. But when your eyes are being tracked, it I think this can open. Let me see. I can talk about it while I do the thing. Or like not talk while I copy paste it, because doing two things is hard. Yeah, so basically it's eye tracking using just like raw Python code. That's like operating in the background, then it's sending over OSC to Touch Designer, and it's creating like this instancing system with some like feedback, and it's all like traveling vertically. So where your eyes are going, it's like drawing this generative shape, and then all of that shape gets added to like this huge grid of all of these different shapes. And I think that's how it ended up. I don't know. He asked for a revision like a day before, showing it at a different place. So I had to make like two separate systems, one for viewing, one for the actual piece. But anyways, yeah, I liked it because every time that someone went through it, uh, it would donate eye surgery to someone in Mozambique. So that was really cool. And then it was like a partnership with Alcon, this I guess medical device company. Um, so yeah, that happened. Yeah, and then I also like have been using a lot of generative AI. Wondering about like, okay, can we use music to create? What? No, can we? I don't know what I wrote here. Anyways, basically, I want to use video and visual programs to create music. Like I just like exploring that, and so this was something that I showed at Sonar last year. Does this work? Oh yeah, I have to like do the slideshow thing again, maybe. Yeah, so this was something I worked on. It's basically a sequencer. It's going across these different pixels. It's sampling the pixels, getting the RGB average, and then sending that as MIDI to another computer that then is set up in Ableton with a bunch of different instruments that are playing the sound. So as the video is changing, which is telling a story of solar punk migrations, and it's all like in this poetry form, of course. And then that's like causing all of the MIDI to change, and then causing the music to evolve as well. So yeah, that's that. Um, then Hamel Industries hit me up. They were like, "Hi, I'm Anna. I want to meet you. By the way, can you work for me for like 3 days next week?" And I was I was like, "Okay, cool, sure." um, and so I went there to their studio, and they're like, "Look, we're going on tour next week with Floating Points, and need help with Touch Designer. Can you help us with that?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." So it was really cool. It ended up being like sort of a little bit of what I did in Japan with like these sort of like very intricate for the artist, like very specific tooling. And so like she basically was like, "Look, I want this knob to feel like this. No, it's like too fast. Let's make it feel a little like slower at the beginning and then go smooth." So that every time she was playing something live, it would just feel right and like perfect for her as an artist. So that was really cool to kind of like be like a tool maker in that sense. Um, Extrema, it's just another VR performance. It's conceptual about like burnout and stuff, but I got really into like the the GUI and stuff like that. The HUD, as you want to call it. So you'll see in the background there, I have like all the. I did a performance of it at DEF CON, and I wanted to show like how you're getting so much data from headsets, and it's like tracking, and there like probably needs to be better security on like headsets and things like that, and also like you can hack them and then find out about like a bunch of stuff that people are doing. But yeah, then I expanded that in various forms, added like some AI video along with generative visuals to give like different elements of it, because it was kind of about like entering into a tesseract of the self, like what happens when you reach the point of burnout, but then you push beyond it and you're like getting through your physical form into this like other realm, and you're kind of like halfway disintegrating, but your like cells are like kind of dancing in that in between state. Um, and I generally reserve that performance for when I'm actually feeling that way, so it's authentic. Which I probably could have done that in Berlin last week, but it's okay. I did a different performance. I'll tell you about soon. But next, I want to tell you about installation that I worked on last year called Entropic Everything. So this installation was like probably one of my most complete projects because I tried to go absolutely insane with the concept. So I wanted to talk about entropy. I ended up finding out that entropy is a huge topic. Like it's basically like a grand unifying theory of the universe. And it's like one of the things that like scientists just do not know. So I opened like a crazy Pandora's box, but I wanted to talk about different types of entropy. So like the entropy biologically, chemically, even like from the Big Bang, in an identity sense, in an ancestral sense, and then information entropy. So like the way that we're interacting with AI and the way, which is kind of what inspired it, because I was doing a performance before that. I don't think it's in these slides, that I was taking like experimental dancers, doing body tracking, then mapping that to video, in AI video form, and then like performing with that to talk about being tied up or hug, blah blah blah. Anyways, while I was working on that, I got interested in the fact that while it's tracking the bodies, it just loses tracking, and then the AI thinks for itself and fills in the blanks. So I wanted to talk about this entropy that AI is giving us, that like we're starting to create a world model where like we don't go to Google anymore, we go to ChatGPT and we trust the information that it's giving us, but it's inherently entropic because it's being interpreted by like what it's been learned on. And so, okay. Yeah, it all started with poetry again. This is the poetry. Um but then what I did is I created a language. So I wanted to look at the points on Earth where there was the highest amount of entropy. And so I took all of those places, I found a language for that, and then translate every single word in a circling order of all of those places. And I had these different places, I had these different languages, and then I'm like, all right, cool. You know the Entropico language, ChatGPT, so translate my poem into that language. And then I decided to like take it one step further, and turn the poem into a sculpture. So I wanted to actually take all of those words and then use a cipher, like a A26Z cipher, which turns all of the letters into numbers, and create a XYZ coordinates for each word. And then I decided to take that and turn it into a point cloud in Blender, um, using just like a Python script. And then, it ended up like this shape. And this is what ended up being the 3D printed sculpture in the middle, on top of the altar. And so underneath it is like the text of the poetry like leading into this centerpiece on a broken screen. The screen was just broken, but it fits with the concept. Um, and then surrounding it are hand plates, which are also 3D printed, with mini OLED screens that are basically displaying sort of like cryptic instructions on what to do. So like bow your head and pray. So I wanted to make this sort of like a place of worship to entropy. Um, so yeah, there's the central altar, and then another big component is the organza screen. So I made holographic screens, just like from wood, and then this organza fabric that has this really nice like shimmering like quality to it. And so there are 3 layers of those to again add entropy, so that the image that you're seeing has been filtered multiple times. And then each of the screens represents the different form of entropy, which are 2 lines in the poetry, and those 2 lines were used to prompt the generative AI to create video in Comfy UI. And so then I took the video and I used another AI to generate the depth image of that video. And so when you enter into the space, you see just the depth image all around, and it's all like black and white, a bit ghostly. And there's music playing in the background, and I'll explain the music in a second. Or actually, maybe I'll explain it now. Did I have a picture of the music? No, I don't, so I'll explain it now. The music, actually, during this section of the black and white, is more ambient, and it's from all of the different translations of the poetry into those different languages of the highest entropy, put into 11 labs as like text to speech, and then those put into a granular synthesizer, and then that granular synthesizer being processed by my modular system. So it's like this like breakdown and like super slicing and then texturizing of all of these different languages together in this sort of entropic manner, again, to create this background soundscape. And then when there's all 4 people put their hands on the altar and then put their heads down to pray, it activates all of the colors, and you see the actual videos. And then a song plays. Is this a video? No. Well, anyways, then a song plays that was created entirely just using Udio, which is the AI generator thing, where I just pasted the Entropico version of the lyrics, and then I typed in, I don't know why, Japanese throat singing, and it came out with just like a phenomenal song. I'll show it to you later if you want. I don't think it's in here, but I'm making an album based off of that song now, just because I really love how it sounded. It's like Marina Herlop a little bit, but then like super like African Latin vibe at the same time, and then free jazz. So it's interesting. Yeah. So, anyways, after last year, I decided that I wanted to start meetups for Touch Designer, because I felt like I kept meeting people that were like, "Yeah, I use Touch Designer," and then I'd be like, "Yeah, do you know this person?" Everybody's like, "No," and then like everybody knew like two people, but outside of that, like not people weren't talking. And so I started the meetup, I think 6 months ago. It's been really great so far. Lots of really interesting talks, and sharing of knowledge, and yeah, we hosted some live coding stuff during the live coding international conference, with some really dope people, like Char Styles and Switch Angel. And then we've also been hosting audiovisual nights, so like working with like the modular community, having modular artists come, and then we have the Touch Designer community provide the visuals, so it's full like AV session. And now my new project is I'm working, because I was 3D printing these things for this last project, and I would hear the printer in the other room, and I'm like, that is beautiful noise. That is just beautiful. So I'm working on this new project called Entropic Music for Printers, and the idea is that I will take ancient, well, the ancient African religion of Santeria, which I'm Puerto Rican, and my great grandmother was a priestess of Santeria, and I have a deep connection to it. just internally. I was working on a documentary when I skipped graduation and then met that lady who said, "Do I know Final Cut?" I was working on a I was working on a documentary with her on candomblé, which is Santeria, but from Brazil, and it was focused on the rhythms and the movements of this tradition. And so I want to revisit that and take the movements of Santeria and have the 3D printers make these movements to where they're both making a physical sculpture, but the sound itself is the music. And so they're like properly mic'd up with like electromagnetic mics, with contact mics, and with normal mics. So they each have like three different voices. And so you have like these 9 voices between the 3 printers. I'm the 4th printer. And I'll get into that later if you want. And that's kind of the idea there. So yeah, this was part of the film, so you can see kind of where this is coming from. So yeah, that's that. Lots of errors here. Yeah, I had videos for the other stuff I was talking about, but I didn't play them because I'm good like that. But anyways, also like, so I'm trying to like raise money for this one because it's expensive and stuff like that. So I'm applying to like, like grants like nonstop. Um, for this one, it's like a bigger project for me. But while I'm doing that, I'm like, I got idle hands. I'm just like, I got these hands. I got to use them for something. So I've decided that I want to make Touch Designer a live coding engine, and it's perfectly suited for it because it's inside of a loop and there's Python in there, so you can run Python in there. And I had a system. I was building modules when I was in Chicago for Touch Designer, but my computer got stolen about a month ago, and all that work is gone. But that's okay because I just rebuilt it all for a performance last week in Berlin and made like way crazier stuff. So here I'm controlling the actual Touch Designer node network with Python, making it oscillate to an LFO's frequency, which is also controlling my Touch Designer is controlling entirely my modular synth setup, which is producing the sound. Here's a sequencer. It's called the arpeggiator gator. So it's a alligator that's an arpeggiator. It creates melodies in a sequence. And that one was more like full Python. And I'm doing like very like traditional live coding techniques, like chatting with the crowd and from like the command line and things like that. And then I ended the show by creating a computer virus on my own computer, which they seem to like. But yeah, I think that for this one it gets pretty interesting because I'm using also like 3D shapes and using the trajectory of certain like complex structures to create the curves that then create the music, but then I'm bringing back in the music into the first part of the creation of those shapes. So it's creating this sort of emergent aspect to it that I'm excited to explore more of. And now I'm back to the present moment. That's my stuff. If you have questions, I think there's like 2 minutes.
You obviously have a lot of interests and a lot of things going on. How do you decide on what to focus, or you don't? It's always like you're working on several things at the same time.
Yeah, so there was a time in my life when I was studying Vedic astrology, and the astrologer told me, you're gonna work a lot in this life. Like, sorry. And that's been true. I just can't escape it. And yeah, it used to be. I used to be like very like separate, like there's this phrase like separate church and state or whatever. But and I used to be like that when I was younger. I would be like, no, I'm a musician now. No, I'm a VJ now. No, I'm an artist now. And no, I'm a coder now. And like really compartmentalize and like focus for months on those things, and then all the in betweens just started to naturally dissolve. And yeah, deciding what to work on, it's hard. It's hard to distinguish between like the passion and spark of like the day to day of like I just want to sit down in front of the synth, between like that and like I have to have this big conceptual project, and I have to like have this very like I want to get stuff in museums type of attitude. And it I don't know. It's a process. Let's say that. Anybody else have annoying questions for me? That was not annoying, by the way. Only accepting annoying questions. Cool.